bring you food. Anybody got any brandy? I'm Steve Holland, and I'm Jerry Shiverdecker's son by another mother. I loved him, and y'all did too, or you wouldn't be here. He was a piece of work. Mark Twain once said, "So live your life that when your summons comes, even your undertaker will be sad." Well, I was sad when Nan called me, but I was not surprised, quite frankly. And I just thank the Lord that Jerry came into my life some years ago and really encouraged me. We were a lot alike, which could be good and could be bad, depending on which side of life you're on. But the bottom line was, he was trusted, tried, proven, a good guy, cut a wide path. And so I'm going to ask Miss Nan to come up, if she will, right quick. Or do you want to finish, Miss Nan?
Miss Nan doesn't do anything very quick, but I'll come.
Well, come on up here, sir. We're going to wait on you. Mrs. Jerry Shiverdecker, Nan Looney.
I do not have any formal words. Can you hear me? I just cannot tell you how much we have been appreciative and astonished by the outflowing of comments and love and offers of help and support since Jerry died. And I know that hardly anybody knew he was very sick. And that was what he wanted. That's what we did. But we do appreciate it very much. And I do want to mention a couple of things. Our daughter, if you read the obituary by now, you know that Jerry did not write his own obituary, and neither did he leave her a timeline, which she's been asking for several years. So I appreciate and admire the work that she did on that. I also want to thank my nephew, Chad Watson, for helping us put together the video, and my sister, Robin, for helping me find pictures for this occasion on real short notice. And I appreciate everyone that came. It's just, I'm so glad you're all here. And I hope that you will continue to support the city and support the news web and help me get along. And call us if you need us. We will help you as much as we possibly can. Jerry loved you all, and he just thought that the police departments, the fire department, lights, gas, and water, and I'm forgetting one, and the sheriff's department made this town. His Marine friends that are so active in everything. He loved every one of you. Sam, you know he loved you. And he was an unusual person. And that has been brought home to me very pointedly in the last few days. And I appreciate it. And I love you all. And thank you. And please, if you have anything you'd like to say, we have a couple of people who I've asked to speak because they're longtime friends of Jerry's, but I would like anybody else who has a word they'd like to say, pro or con, just help yourself. But I feel like after the last few days, most of it's going to be pro. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nan. Linda, do you want to say anything? You're okay? Good. Fire department? By the way, Nan didn't pay me enough to be MC, but I'm honored to do it.
Well, it's an honor to be here. I'm here. My name's Brad Stacy. I'm the Community Risk Reduction Officer. I'm also the chaplain of the fire department. But my chief asked me to be here and speak some words he had written about Jerry. And Mark wished he could have been here. He had to be at another location tonight. But this is what he typed for me to say. I met Jerry years ago, and we have spoken back and forth weekly for years. First of all, know Jerry is well and experienced in itself. When he would call, even though I have caller ID and his number in memory, he would always say, "Mark, this is Shiverdecker. How are you, my friend?" Jerry was not only a friend, but an exceptional and faithful friend to the New Albany Fire Department. I don't ever think I heard him say a negative word about anything we did. He would tell me, "You are all doing an exceptional job. Keep up the good work." He would always close our conversation with the question, "Do you need anything?" And he meant it. The last conversation Jerry and I had was on Sunday before he passed. He called and I was not able to answer. I called him back a little later. I knew our crew had gone out to assist him a few days before, and I wanted to make sure he didn't need anything. When I called him back, he just wanted to thank us, and I told him he didn't have to thank us, and if he needs anything to call the deputy chief or myself on our cell phones, unless it was an emergency, which both happened in the next couple of days to come. He asked me, was I headed to the coast for a conference, and I told him yeah. He said, "Represent well, as usual. When you get back, come by Friday and let's have one of those," he couldn't remember any, "one of those coffee drinks." And I said, "A cappuccino?" He said, "No." And I said, "Espresso?" He said, "Yes, that's what it is." He said, I told him I would be there for sure. Before I left Monday morning, our crew had gone out to assist him and Miss Nan. I was sad when I woke up Tuesday morning and saw the dispatch on my phone to his address and the text messages from various people that he had passed. I learned very early that Jerry was not from here. One conversation let the cat out of the bag. He had that voice to let you know that he was a transplant. I also learned very quickly that Jerry was 100% genuine, and that if we were to get along, I would have to be the same. I would always tell Jerry the truth, but there were times when I would look at him and say, "Well, I just can't answer that one right now." And he would know at that point what I was doing, and he would respect that. Did we see eye to eye on everything? Hardly. Politics was an area we did not always discuss. I believe mainly because our friendship was not based on, nor would have been benefited either of us to waste our time disagreeing on something that was irrelevant to us. Jerry was a sounding board for me on issues quite often, and he was not above telling me to drop it or put it in perspective and tell me that were bigger battles to fight and not to worry about it. He would put me back on track and let me see the overall picture. I had my first taste of missing Jerry Friday. He would have been the first person I talked to about the bad weather and what we were up against. It was an odd feeling not getting that call. "Mark, this is Shiverdecker." I said that was my best Shiverdecker impression. "What can you tell me about the storm damage?" So with this being said, you will be missed, old friend. You made an impression on my professional and personal life. You were a great storyteller, and who I will send a picture of my mixed drink to, and wish a happy New Year to, from now on every December 31st. All right.
A very distinguished Mississippian and outstanding American former state auditor, Steve Patterson.
Well, right off the bat, Holland goes the line. I'm not going to get behind this podium because I've got as big as Brandon Presley used to be, and I can't fit back there. The poet Samuel Falls had a poem that goes something like this, or at least a part of it goes like this. "Let me live in my house by the side of the road and be a friend to man. Let me live in my house by the side of the road where the race of men go by. The men who are good, the men who are bad, wise and foolish, and so am I. But I will not sit in the scorner's seat, nor hurl the cynic's ban. No, no, let me live in my house by the side of the road and be a friend of mine." Jerry Shiverdecker lived in that house beside of the road, that metaphorical house beside of the road, and he was a friend to mine. I went through some dark days here several years ago, and it was Jerry Shiverdecker who came and embraced me. I found that I could explain all of my demons to, and he could explain all of his demons. And I genuinely fell in love with the man. And Jerry had a very good career. When I first knew him, he was at my other hometown. Folks used to say every town in Mississippi was one of my hometowns. But that was only true when I was running for office. I lived in Louisville, and Jerry was the editor of the Winston County Journal. And then some 30 years later, when I came back to what really was my home, and Jerry was here with the Gazette and later with Mississippi News Web, he immediately began to lobby me to write an article. And I steadfastly refused. Said, no, I'm not going to get into all that. Well, over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, I think I've written 60 articles for Mississippi News Web. Some of you knew Jerry, and I experienced those same calls. Steve, this is Shiverdecker. And he always ended with me in a unique way that I will reveal later. But we had a lot of fun. Simpatico is sort of a word that, Elizabeth, you'll particularly understand this. It's Greek for sympathy. We were simpatico. We had the same interest, the same curiosity. We talked about history. We talked about literature. We talked about writing. We talked about sports. A lot of people don't know it, but Jerry Shiverdecker covered Muhammad Ali when he was in Miami, and we had just a grand old time doing that. One of the last conversations I had with him, which was just before he left the cardio rehab center in Fulton, he talked to me at great length about his love for this little woman right here, and about man. And he talked to me about the joy, the unrivaled joy that he had that Elizabeth was back home. Jerry and I shared a lot of demons. We shared a lot of good times. He's a great storyteller, and he'd get me started, and we'd have a battle of storytellers before we go. But he was my dear friend. Now, I don't know what y'all believe, but let me tell you what I believe. I believe old Jerry's up there today, and I think he's already interviewed Abraham Lincoln. And probably Carl Sandburg, too. And he's looking for Bedford Forrest. These are all things that he and I had in common, and we talked about a great deal. As a matter of fact, one of those articles that I wrote for him, he didn't agree with a damn word I said. And he called me to tell me about it. But he published it anyway. And he told me why he didn't agree with it. Well, I went on and argued with the old curmudgeon a little bit. He said, well, I'm going to write a rebuttal. I said, well, do it. Saddle up and do it. The next day he calls me and he says, I've been thinking about what you said. He said, I'm not going to write a rebuttal. I've decided you're right. I said, wait a minute, Jerry. I've decided you were right. I want you to take that article down. But anyway, that's the kind of relationship we have. I believe he's up there and he's having a good time. I believe his curiosity is just unbelievable. All of the many questions that he and I had and that we talked about over the years, from philosophical questions, theological questions, historical events, he's now getting the answers to. And that incredible curiosity of his is finally being satisfied. I want to ask your permission to say one word of prayer, if you would join me. Father, it's me again, a lowly sinner saved by the atoning blood of your Son. I want to thank you for the civic-minded man that you let us all share in his life. And Father, I want to thank you for bringing him into my life and into the lives of everybody in this room and this community. Jerry Shiverdecker lived in the house by the side of the road. Jerry Shiverdecker was a friend of mine. Jerry Shiverdecker left every community that he ever lived in, Father, better than it was when he found it. We commend the spirit of my dear friend, Jerry Shiverdecker, in your care. Amen. Now, having said that, we would end every call that I had with, next time you're in town, let's get together and drink some some brown whiskey. Well, I don't know if they got whiskey in heaven or not. I got to believe that they do because they wouldn't be heaven otherwise. So he's probably getting back with old Abe and some of them having that drink. And he would be so thrilled to see each of you here. So, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Auditor, so much. Our next speaker lost his father when he was 8 years old. He lost his mother when he was 13 years old. He became the youngest mayor ever elected to Nettleton, Mississippi at age 21. He went on to serve several terms, and about 3 or 4 terms ago, you elected him as the Public Service Commissioner for the Northern District of Mississippi. He, in my opinion, was unexcelled in his responsibilities in that area. He, if nothing else, was the leader of the movement to bring broadband to rural Mississippi, which is going to give rural Mississippi the same leg up that every other town has anywhere around. He has made a major decision in his life. Number one, to marry one of the most beautiful girls I've ever seen in my life. And number two, to hopefully, with your help, and he certainly got mine, to be the 66th governor of the state of Mississippi, the Honorable Brandon Presley.
I'm like Steve Patterson, I don't need a microphone, although I can fit behind that now. Jerry Shiverdecker was an encourager.
Yes.
As much as anything.
Yes.
And in my life, throughout the time, I didn't know Jerry and Nan. I didn't know them. Melvin Malone was painting y'all's house. Melvin Malone was my primary school principal. He tore up my rear end a bunch of days. Didn't get as many whippings as I needed, but he did it a lot. And he was painting their house. I'd see him at the coffee shop. He'd say, Jerry Shiverdecker said this. Jerry Shiverdecker said that. And then Steve would say this. I was trying to piece together, who is this cat? You know, I don't know him. But we got to become friends. And as I said, Jerry was an encourager. Now, I didn't know who he was when he and I met. And every single point, I'd call him about breakups with old girlfriends. His advice on that wasn't too good. All right? One time he told me to go back to one. I knew that was a mistake. But he was such an encourager. He was the true definition of a Renaissance man. You say Renaissance man. Whether it be the books he read, the art he knew, the topics he could talk with you about. I posted something earlier in the week. I never left Jerry Shiverdecker's house that I was not intellectually curious about something that I had no idea about before I got there. No matter what it was. I'll give an example. Robert Moses, who was the chairman of 15 boards in the city of New York and built the highways and parks, never heard of him. Jerry pulls out this book, 2,042 pages, and says, here, I'm going to give this to you. You need to read it. I thought, well, gee, thanks. See you in 2 years. And I think when I quit drinking That upset him worse than anything because we couldn't share a highball out. But he was an encourager. I'll give you a couple of instances. I was going to pull my phone out. When you do that, people think he's got to read his speech. And that wasn't what I was going to do. I was going to talk about these text messages you got at 2:30 in the morning. Okay? I don't know what sleep schedule he kept, but it was way off. But it was always a word of something to pick you up. And I really mean that. Something to pick you up. I decided to take up painting of all things. Like this, not as good as this, but trying. And I have 2 cases of oil paint that was yours, that he gave me and said, now look, this is about $2,000 worth of paint, but we don't need it no more. Carry it home. One of my most vivid memories of him, number 1 was he covered everything in civic life in this community. And I don't want to let that pass with just glossing over it. Because in the world in which we live today, so much of what we read on the news and know in the news is just farmed out. People don't know where New Albany is, could care less where Myrtle is, never heard of Inkamar, not coming to cotton plant. They don't care. He really invested time, energy, and money in your community to keep people connected as to what was going on here. And I don't want that to be lost on any of you. I really don't, because in the world in which we live today, that is the exception, not the rule. He'd show up and hold the board of supervisors accountable. He'd show up and hold me accountable. There was nothing which we came to this community to talk about that you didn't have to look up and worry about whether Jerry was going to be in the audience or not. One of my really clearest memories of him, I've been working in Nettleton for a while to get us a new library. And this was something, it takes forever, small town, finally got it, beautiful facility. And he pulled up behind right across from the old Union County Jail by the courthouse one night. I got done with the meeting, and he said, I got you a few books for the library. Well, I thought 10 or 12, Try 10 or 12 cases of books in which we've dedicated to the library. He did not seek a place to serve. And I don't know that in the world in which we live today, honestly, if that's not the greatest testimony to somebody's life. Really and truly, at the end of the day, what were you doing plugged into your community, into the people around you? Did you really listen? And I was telling Caitlin when I was coming over here, the girl I'm going to marry, I said, Jerry, she never got to meet Jerry. I said, Jerry intentionally listened. There's a big difference. There's a big difference in just hearing what you say and it going in one ear and out the other. He intentionally listened and wanted to know what was going on in your life. What's been happening on this? It wasn't political stuff or gossip column stuff necessarily for something he's going to write. He really cared. And as I thought about his life since Nan sent me that text at 5:30 Wednesday morning, I knew there's something special about him. And I think this is the sad part of life, that all of us have to take this as a memory going forward. Sometimes we need to take a moment and reflect what really that specialness of somebody is. And Jerry was not only one of the smartest people I ever met, one of the most well-rounded people I ever met, somebody that truly invested in their friends. But he was somebody that lived a life that mattered. How many folks are just going to pass through this old world, never impact anything, never try to impact it? We all have the ability to do it. It's whether or not you got to get up and go into gumption to really sow the seeds there. And he could have sailed off into the wild blue after the newspaper days and not done anything, went on about his business, but he cared about his community. He cared about investing back. Lynn, when I saw you stand over there, I can't think of how many times, he's bragged on me. I really mean that. And was an encourager of yours, an encourager of so many people in this room. Let me tell you something. In this old world of drudgery and darkness, and every day's full of stress, and every day's full of somebody pulling at you or somebody talking about you, life, L-I-F-E, life. We need the likes of Jerry Shiverdecker to pass among us, to sometimes pick you up, to sometimes give you the strength to take another step, to go forward, to find a way. And he never let those of us that he loved and cared about quit. I can remember, Steve, just some stuff going on. when you're in this public life, there's missiles passing your head every day. And Jerry picked up the phone and called me one day. He said, "Don't let the son of a bitches get you down." Click. That was it. And sometimes that's what you need to hear. Sometimes that's exactly what you need to hear. Because you know that somebody's there and they care about you. And they care about how and which you can pick up and go on. And there's a lot of political tales that are going to the grave, literally, with Jerry. I can think of some he told from the state of Alabama that probably some folks are wiping their brow saying, "Woo! Maybe this won't get written about these days." He's told some of us now some of that, but it would be hearsay in a court of law, so we can't tell it. But Jerry lived a life of giving back and of encouraging and of caring and of finding a way to actually do the thing that matters the most. And it's taken me 45 years to realize this. 45 years. They say confession is good for the soul. But he's an example. To get out of yourself and try to do something for somebody else. It's simple. It truly is simple. But he never lacked doing that. And he loved y'all too beyond measure. It's kind of funny. I was in Washington at a meeting. And I ran into this guy. And everything in Mississippi is just 1 degree of separation. Somebody knows somebody that knows somebody that knows somebody. Missouri must be the same way. Because I'm at this event in Washington, and this guy comes up. He said, "I'm from Fulton." Is it Fulton County?
It's Callaway County.
Callaway County, Fulton, Missouri. I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I got a buddy of mine in New Albany that's from there." He said, "What's his name?" I said, "Jerry Shiverdecker." He said, "I was his debate partner in college." And I texted that guy and told him that Jerry had passed away, and I don't know if he's got up with y'all or not, but he is. He said, "Man, I want you to know something. That guy has a brain as sharp as a scalpel. He eviscerated me on the debate stage." He said, "I ain't got over it 50 years later." But Jerry came among us to make things better. He truly did. He was our friend, and to hundreds and thousands more that ain't in this room. And he made life better. He made this community better. He made those of us he touched better. And his legacy is going to live on a long, long time after this. We are all better because Jerry Shiverdecker lived. It's the honest to God truth. We're all better because he lived. Because he encouraged us. Because he set an example of a classy gentleman, of a scholar, of somebody that plugged in and didn't give up, of somebody who didn't just go sail off into a retirement sunset, of somebody that would write an article about somebody coming through New Albany on a horse crossing the United States. I always said that Jerry was the Charles Corral of Union County. Y'all remember Charles Corral, the Sunday morning show? And that's what he was. And I'm just honored to be able to stand up here and say something about my friend and a man who was a giant among this community, Jerry Shiverdecker. Jerry, we love you, and we're going to do what's right. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor. There are a lot of people in here that might want to say something. It's hot as hell to me in here. But Sam, would you like to come up and say a few words? He loves you. He talked about you all the time. Can you make it, brother? I'll come over to you. Hold on. No, I don't think the phone's long. Okay. I'll take that out. It'll be okay. You'll get her and come over here. Okay. Thank you. All y'all doing all right today? That's what Jerry called me and asked me, how you doing today? Let's think about how many people in this room would call you and just say, how you doing? Think about that.
you doing today? Anything I can do for you? How many people ain't she got? Think about that for a minute. He was a gentleman, a scholar, and a good friend of mine. And I'll tell you that right now to his whole family. And the whole family of New Albany, Mississippi, and all around. We shared a lot of things together and very good friends. He always would call me up, tell me, son, I ain't got much time, I just want to check on you, see how you're doing. A lot of it, you know, when you're sick and you're not doing very well, you know how we do. Oh, I'm doing okay. I wasn't doing okay, but after I got through talking to him, I felt much better. And I just want to say to the family, friends, and everybody, he was a good man, he was a good father, he was a good husband, he was a good community man.
I'll get you a guitar next.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Come on down, Sam.
You see, my legs are weak. So, but Jerry would always call me and ask me how I was doing. And do I need anything? Think about that for a minute. How many people call you up and say, how are you? Do you need anything? Is there anything I can do for you? Just think about that for a minute. I don't have that many people that would call me and ask me that. Next thing I look up, he had a whole basket of stuff coming in and bringing it to me. You know, I brought you something, he would say. And I call that a friend. I call that a good friend. And I just want to know the family. He was well loved. He was well loved. He had all kinds of friends. White folks, black folks, you name it. It was always the same. He would bring me things. I didn't even ask him for it. I brought you something to eat. Think about that for a minute. And I'd be hungry. But anyway, he was one of those kind of people that he was always friendly, and he was always there if you ever needed him. You don't have people like that all the time from anywhere, any race of people. So I just want to say to the family, God bless you. You had a good man, a good family man. And for the rest of us in here that maybe didn't know him like I knew him, he was a friend to me and a friend to all. So I just want to say, God bless Jerry, and take a little bit of that home with you. Thank you.
I walked in and saw Sam,
Yes, sir.
and he said, Steve Holland, I played at your initial entrance at Mississippi State in 1973. I said, you dang sure did, and I got in trouble that very night. Great legend in these parts. Anybody else want to say anything? Jerry loved everybody, and come on up, brother. But now, if we get much longer, we'll have to break out a bottle somewhere.
who I am is not important. Today, my job is I am chauffeur for Dr. Jekyll. Let me tell you what that means. When I learned of early in the day of Jerry's death, I turned over in bed to Kay and I said, well, Dr. Jekyll, your finest monster has died. What's the story behind that? And the reason I take a moment here is because this is a story that should last. There was a young school teacher. It was 60 years ago this August. I was a student in the School of Law, and Kay was working on a graduate degree. And the superintendent, Lou Lewis of Fulton Schools, decided that they should have a debate program. And Kay had been a very successful college debater, and so she was recruited to take that job. And we were living in Columbia with a couple dogs and a little trailer house, and she was commuting to Fulton School. The first day or two after she was there for the orientation, she came home and said, an interesting day. Some of the older teachers came up and talked to me and said, Mrs. Garrett, is this your first year of teaching? And she said, of course, she said, well, yes. And she was young and dewy-eyed and optimistic and cute and all that. They said, well, we are really concerned about you because there are a group of students that are troubled that are all going to take debate. And she said they said they're smart, they're good in their studies, they know so much, they're interested in everything that's going on in the world, but they're kind of disagreeable. And they disagree with things, and they want to question everything. And they're just really hard to deal with, and we are so sorry you're going to have to deal with them. Kay's response to that when she was telling me about it said, this looks good. Well, of course, Jerry was one of them, and so this old gray-haired guy back there in the back, Bob Preston, was one of them too. Now that group produced some PhDs, some successful businessmen and media people, several lawyers. One of them that we communicate with this week is chairman of the police commission in Kansas City. Bob is retired from a distinguished career with the Attorney General's office. And so that was when Jerry first came into our life. And Kay gives Jerry a lot of credit for shaping her. And Jerry gives Kay credit for shaping him, but it was a mutually beneficial relationship. And so when I say Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the things that we are proud of about Jerry and some of the things that maybe we're not so proud of were fostered in that very beginning. And so that's where it started with us. Thank you.
I do want to speak for myself just a moment. I thought you must be thinking, well, what's wrong with the mute woman? Well, nothing.
Well, there's nothing wrong with it.
No. I do want to say that I saw Jerry when he was a sophomore, and I did 3 years debate, and it was absolutely a wonderful time. And Jerry always stayed in touch with us. When my first son was born, he sent a little stuffed squirrel in honor of the squirrel decisions that they had received as debaters, because they never lost the debate. It was those squirrel judges that did it to them. So, and then when I had our 50-year class reunion, here came Jerry from Mississippi up to Missouri to say happy anniversary. So he's always been in touch. We've been visiting in our home. We've been to his home. Been wonderful. And all of you that you talked about, how he made you feel good. Well, boy, did he make me feel good. He made me think I was the best teacher that ever came down the pipe. And I love to believe it. But one thing I do know, I received more than I gave Jerry, I'm sure, because he made me feel so good about myself and what I did. And I loved him. And every teacher, I hope, gets one Jerry in their lifetime of teaching.
Anyone else?
I would like to say.
Come on.
First of all, you're lacking one book, because I was over at his house and saw a book I'd wanted to read ever since I was a little girl, 1001 Arabian Nights. He gave it to me. And I think it's probably Scotch instead of brown whiskey. But I wanted to say a few words about Jerry, because he meant so much to me and to my husband Carl. And I got to thinking, a word, what can I say, a word about Jerry? And I looked up the definition of a word in the dictionary, and it's just something that is said. And then I thought, Jerry loved words. He was a master. He could skillfully take those somethings and create pictures in your mind and just solve the most intricate thought puzzles with you, so that you could clearly understand things that, like people have said, you had no interest in at first, but you gained an interest. You had no knowledge of, but you gained knowledge after talking to him. He had, like has been said, just the broadest range of knowledge on different topics. And he wasn't reticent about giving you his opinion on any of them. But many were the times that I was so enthralled at his words, and I struggled to even make the slightest addition to any conversation. That was hard, because it was just hard to keep up with him. But each time that we met, my husband Carl and I left with our minds exercised, and of course our knowledge enhanced. A week before he passed away, late in the evening on June 6th, he called me. No, it was right after you had texted me. He said he just wanted to thank us for coming to visit him when we had seen him earlier in his stay at the rehab unit in Fulton. And he wanted to let us know that he was going to be freed on Friday. And he was looking so forward to going home, because Nan was there. He talked about Nan. And above that, Elizabeth was there. He wanted to go home so badly. And he talked about the challenges ahead. And he was determined. He said he was determined to get a few more things done. He said he was embracing a new philosophy. It was just get on with it. And I thought, those are good words. Those are some of the last words that he told me. Just get on with it. And then he said he wanted to thank Carl and me for being his friends. And there's no words.
Anyone else?
I'm gonna stay at this table close to this chair. My name is Cook. And I call Brother Jerry my neighbor because I have a little vegetable garden just across the street from him. And I was out there, I met him about a year ago, and I was out there one day pouring some water around the base of the plants. He said, look, he came out across the street, look, there's a hose up there, a water hose, the faucet, it's turned on. And he just made me welcome, and whatever I needed. And I caught it right then. He's a man that really enjoyed, that was after I conversated with him, that enjoyed his work career, and he just loved people. He just loved meeting people, and anytime we love meeting people and talking good things, always we believe the end of life journey is even better over there.
I'm a cook. I'm James Cook. And I live up the street from Jerry. And back 2 years ago, I had a street party blocked off. And Mr. Jerry came by. He said, who having this party? I said, I'm having it, my birthday party between me and my twin sister. He said, Mr. Cook, he said, is it all right if I come up and take some pictures? I said, sure, come on up. And we all was just out there clowning, and dancing, having a good time. Mr. Jerry said, I'm finna dance too, I said, come on. So I fell in love with Mr. Jerry, and every time he would pass by the house, if I was sitting out there under my shed, he gonna always wave, or he gonna stop. How you doing today, James? His wife, the morning that he passed, I had gotten up out of the bed, and when I usually get up and go to the bathroom, I used to look around in my house. I live by myself. I seen some lights down the street from me, shining through my living room window. So I went to the door, and I looked out, and I seen a corner truck was in there. This Pam, I think it was. But anyway, it kind of bugged me, I said, what's going on? So the next day, I didn't wait for them to come and tell me. I went to them and I asked them, they said, yeah, Jerry passed. It hurted me. I had to shed some tears between us. But Mr. Jerry was Mr. Jerry. And he's gonna always be Mr. Jerry to me, and I wish he would, that we all gonna be together one day.
Amen.
If we live like Jerry, we're gonna be together. But we had some good times, no more than we had together. And to his wife and daughter, if you ever need me, I'm just right up the street. You can holler loud enough, I promise you, I hear you, I'm coming. No problem there. I love to help people, so if you need my help, just holler. I'll be there for you. Thank you.
Well, because all these other ones got up, I just want to buy the short. I love Jerry, and I became Jerry's nephew because I was Sam's nephew, and when he talked to me, he said, hey nephew, what's going on? So he was a great guy. That's all I gotta say. Like I said, we loved him, and he just fitted in. And wherever he was at, he fitted in, because he fitted in over there with us. Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Come on up, neighbor.
I was Jerry's debate partner in high school, so I can give you a little earlier perspective on him. I first met Jerry when we were freshmen in high school, because he went to a country school, and so I didn't meet him in junior high or anything like that. You've heard about how voracious and well-read he was. He was that at 14. Mm-hmm. He was the most well-read person I had ever met when I met him as a freshman in high school. I mean, I didn't even know who Immanuel Kant was, and here was somebody who'd read his classic work, The Critique of Pure Reason. Now, that never quite rubbed off on me, but he did jolt me out of my tendency to devour Perry Mason mysteries. I started reading a little more contemporary stuff. I read histories, biographies, so he certainly broadened my end. You've talked about his just curiosity, and it was there even then. I mean, one of the books that was big in high school was a book called King's Row. I don't know whether you've heard it or not. It was made into a movie in 1942, starred Ronald Reagan. But anyway, it was sort of, although mild by today's standards, it was very risque in 1940. It was the Peyton place of its day, the sins and secrets of a small town. Of course, the rumor as we read those in high school was that the characters always were based on real people. Jerry wanted to find out. He talked to every person that he could find that would have had some knowledge of what was like at the turn of the century when this thing was all set. And it all resulted in him then taking me on a tour of King's Row. He showed me houses where various characters had lived. And if the house had been torn down, he could tell me where the site of the house was. So he just had to know things. You've heard about his intelligence. As his debate partner, I always said that he was the brains of the team. I was just kind of carrying his cloak as he went down the aisle, or I was a spirit carrier. I thought maybe I would get ahead of him one time. The summer before our senior year, I spent 5 weeks at a special debate program on Northwestern University campus with lots of kids from other high schools all across the country. So I had a 5-week head start on the debate topic for that year. I was going to get ahead of Jerry this year. I come back, he's already got the whole thing thought out. He knows what our strategy is going to be. He knows what our arguments are going to be. And it is so outside of the box that it gives our opponents fits. I heard that some of their coaches even complained that we were cheating because we weren't really complying with the debate topic that year, that he changed things so much. And Jerry had a tendency to look for ways to try to change the rules to his advantage. So, I saw Jerry, the same characteristics that you've heard about today at a very early time. And I can say that probably, with the exception of my parents, Jerry was the most influential person in my life. I could never quite reach, his standards in terms of he read books faster than I could. He was smarter than I was. But he was always somebody I wanted to emulate. And I'm certainly a better person for having known him. And I'll miss him very much.
Anyone else? Well, I want to thank Jill and her staff. Nan and Liva and I were sitting down at my funeral home, and I could tell there was a little discontent aside from the fact that Jerry was gone and we were all struggling. And Nan finally just blurted out and said, "We're not going to have his funeral in Tupelo." And I said, "No, we're not. We're going to have it at the Union County Heritage Museum." And I'm telling you, it was like the fireworks on New Year's Day. And Nan said, "Perfect." So I'm only telling you this. Next time y'all see Rodney Shands, tell him that you don't have to have a box and spend all that money. These are called celebration receptions. And I'm fixing to make a hit out of them. What I'm doing. Yeah. So anyway, thank y'all for being Nan. You want to close, Livy? I know they want to say thank you for everything. Come on, Livy. Close this out.
I thought I cried out the last few days. But just seeing everyone here, and it made such an effort to be here, to remember my father. I can't thank y'all enough. And for showing me and my mom so much love. It has meant everything. And one of the things that Mr. Mosley said about, and when things, even out, is him just calling up and being, "How are you? So what's going on?" He always seemed to know. He always seemed to know when you needed to hear from him. And, I said I wasn't going to get up today because I wrote that obituary and I said, okay, that's everything I had to say for public consumption and everything else between me and him. But I had to get up and say that because just from my heart, that is what I'm going to miss the most. It's just how present he was. Even when he couldn't be physically present, he was present. And I feel his presence here today in all of you. And that's all I have to say. I thank you all so much. And I'm going to sit back down.
We are officially dismissed. There's food still out here that we won't have to take somewhere, so come and eat it.
The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's lives. Remember your dear friend's cherished place in life, and bring comfort and remind you of the beauty of friendships and connection you share with your friends and family.